Hello, Captain Bill here from Howling Sales Studio. Today we're going to talk about development standardization and using a virtual development box to isolate ourselves from issues in development. Development onboarding can be tricky. It's error prone, very time consuming with all the documentation you need to follow. You got to find all the documentation. You get a lot of interactions between different projects where they share different files, or you have different versions of software that you need for different projects. You end up with port and directory collisions that are very difficult to deal with. So the solution for this is an automated Virtualbox deployment. Uses standard open source tools, and it creates a simple isolation layer, basically a brand new computer for you to work with. For this, we're going to use Virtualbox by Oracle, great tool. There's a lot of other tools you could use in this place, vSphere. You can also use a lot of the online cloud-based systems. But this works pretty well on both Windows and Macintosh computers, and even on another Linux computer. We're going to use another tool from HashiCorp called Vagrant, and this is a tool for automating the builds of virtual boxes. And we're going to install an Ubuntu OS desktop, basically a window GUI-based desktop that you can develop on. It uses standard Linux, which is the same that most of your cloud-based services will end up running on anyways. So the tools you have locally will be the tools you have remotely in most cases. So with that, let me go ahead and switch over and we will start a demo. Okay, all the source code and the project stuff we have set up is on our GitHub repo under GitHub Howling Sales. Vagrant Dev Ubuntu location. Basically talks about all the stuff you need to pre-install Virtualbox Vagrant Get that all working. Right now I'm going to go ahead and I've already cloned it, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So if we do a quick dir, I also have Linux installed on my Windows, so ls works. But there it is, and the command is just vagrant up, and that will read the vagrant file and get it started. So again, we're just going to kind of wait for it to go through. Let's go through and look at what the Vagrant file has in it. We'll kind of hide things here a little bit, and we'll get into those really quickly. So one thing we can see is the Virtualbox is already starting to boot up now. Here's the kind of boot segments that it's going through as it's starting up. And we'll let that go. So let's kind of talk through what this Vagrant file contains. Basically, it's a domain-specific language for Vagrant that allows you to define all the parameters of it. So let's start with the box, and here you can build boxes from other boxes. So I started with a standard off-the-shelf Ubuntu desktop environment. I configured the host name. I told it I want to configure it using a Virtualbox. Inside of the Virtualbox, I want to give it this name. I want to tell it this GUI. I can set the memory, the CPUs. I can configure, in this case, I'm configuring an IDE controller so that we can have a CD drive or a virtual CD drive that's useful in mounting ISOs and such. We have some customizations of Virtualbox itself to enable clipboard and drop and drag bidirectional support. So it allows us to copy and paste from our Windows or Mac computers to the Linux box, click back and forth from Windows on very easily without having to really switch too much. Some standard video settings, VRAM. I've turned off 3D acceleration and video acceleration. It makes the interaction a little bit better for a development environment. I gave it a name, and this is the name that shows up in the VirtualBox UI, so when you're starting and stopping these boxes. Secondly, we have a synced folder, and these are basically a whole bunch of files that we're going to be able to copy over during the installation, and it's in the packages directory here. And in that packages, we got a whole bunch of dot files, bash files, which are useful for setting up the command line, the IamWheel resource, which is configurations for a mouse controller. That allows me to speed up my mouse wheel. And then I have a setup user sh, which basically allows us to just automatically set up our SSH keys, make sure that's all there for when we need SSH keys to either something like Bitbucket or GitHub. In this case, I have a kind of an example of down here that's commented out. You can uncomment it if you need to. And this will automatically publish your SSH keys up to Bitbucket. There's a README file here that lets you see what needs to happen after we install it. So let's go back to Vagrant. And so after it's kind of all done configuring the box and booting it up, after it's started up, it's actually going to shell into the box and run a whole bunch of commands to actually set up what we want. What I have here first is a sources list, and basically this tells Ubuntu where to download sources from, and I've included a good set of current mirrors, and that enables the download of the software that we want as quickly as possible. Then we use apt-get, which is Ubuntu's installer for installing and managing software, and here we're just going to update all the repos. So it's going to go out to the sources list and download all the available components that are available to install. Then we're going to run through a few different steps here. So first of all, we're going to install the VirtualBox guest editions. This is a service that runs inside of Ubuntu and enables the interaction for the bidirectional clipboard and the copy and paste and mouse control in and out of the VirtualBox. So that runs through that whole piece. The next part is installing the profile files for the command line, basically copying a whole bunch of files into the place. Have a nice sed command here to get rid of carriage return line feeds from Windows Editor that I'm using. To clear those out so that it's ready for Linux, which uses a slightly different text file format. Then change the ownership of those files, and also set execute capabilities on the setup user script. Next, we get ready to set up Java. We have everything set up here, with the exception of commented out here is actually the installer for Oracle. I have that commented out because it requires you to look at the licensing and agree to it beforehand. Once you've gone to their site and agreed to it, you can uncomment these and install it here on your local machine. Next, it goes through and uses apt-get to install a whole bunch of software. So we have Maven, Git, Eclipse, TestNG, which is a tool for testing, Chromium Browser, which is the open source version of Chrome, and the Chrome web driver, which allows for automating tests against it. The IamWheel, which is my mouse configuration or settings tool that allows me to change the speed of how the mouse works. And then a couple of other utilities to read files easier. And I have some shortcuts to that we'll talk about later. Then the next thing we do is we'll install or download using wget IntelliJ, the Community Edition. And we'll download that and unpack it into the op directory. The next thing we do is we install Terminator, which is a really good terminal program that I like to use, and we'll get into using that in a minute. Also, Visual Studio Code, another editor that's very useful. And once that's all done, just prints out a that's all, folks. So with this, we can look at where it's going. We can see it's downloading a whole bunch of files to get all this stuff up and working. And at this point, I'll pause the recording, and I'll come back after it's all done. Okay, it's all complete. We can go back and we can see here's installing Visual Studio Code and so on and so forth. Here's installing IntelliJ and everything else. Let's go ahead and switch over and actually look at the box. I'm going to maximize that. I'm going to log in. The password is Vagrant for the user, Vagrant. That's the default. Of course, you can create new users and stuff, but this is already under my protected computer. Okay, so here we are on Ubuntu 18.04, codenamed the Bionic Beaver, and they got this cute little beaver thing. We'll give you a quick walk around inside of Ubuntu. So here we have kind of our taskbar with our favorites on it, and we can get files, and this gives us kind of our whole directory structure on the system. You can go to like other locations, the computer, and you can go through all the different directories. Over here we have sound control. Here's where we turn it on or off. We can control the network, and we can power off the machine here if we want to restart or power off. I'm going to cancel. Down here we have our applications, and we're going to start off with Terminator. And the first thing I'm going to do is kind of maximize it here. And I'm going to do is I'm going to cat the readme.md file. And we go, okay, there's a set of steps to set up Terminator. And it basically works like this. So inside of Terminator, right click, go to Preferences. Go to Profiles, go to Commands, run as a command shell. And we'll close that. In the meantime, we saw a little pop-up in the background. The software updater came up, and this is basically going to patch Ubuntu up with the latest patches. We're going to cancel that. I'll run that a little bit later. Now, after I set the Ubuntu up, I'm going to go ahead and that I set up Terminator. I'm going to close it down, and I'm going to reopen it. And when I reopen it, it's going to run those bash scripts. And so now we have a nice command prompt. It gives us the username, gives us the host name, gives us the IP addresses, gives us the current time in UTC, gives us the current directory. I can like CD into different directories. It automatically lists a directory when I go to it. There's actually not a dev directory. But it gives a couple other things that are kind of handy. So there's a MD viewer, which now we'll do the readme.md. And now we get a better way to view our readme files. So it actually color codes them and such. Now what we're going to do here for the next set is set up IntelliJ. And with Terminator, we have the ability to split windows. Now I'm going to have two windows open. And so I can just follow directions now, and I'm going to go CD opt. I'm going to type Intel, and I just hit tab, and it'll complete it for me. I'll type B, hit tab. Oops, there's two B's. So hit it twice, and it shows me that, BIN. So now I'm in the bin directory. And basically I'll do /IDE.sh, and this will run IntelliJ for the first time. I don't need to import any settings because this is a brand new installation. I'm going to confirm and accept their policy. I'm going to go ahead and set in the usage statistics, hopefully make the thing a little bit better. I like to use Darkula. You can choose your color scheme. You can also customize IntelliJ quite a bit. I wanted to set up a launcher script. I wanted to go ahead and set up a default command line so I can type IDE at the command prompt and open up the current directory. Here's the default plugins that we have in it. And I'm going to go ahead and start using it. Now it's going to ask me for my username to make those settings changes. So that gives us Vagrant. With that, a couple other things I want to do here real quick is on any of these these running programs, the little red dot shows us running. I can right click and add to favorites. Add to favorites. And now if I actually close Terminator, it still shows up there. So now I can open IntelliJ now or install and run Terminator very quickly without having to go to here. Over here, let's go ahead and go to Visual Studio. code. And it opened up. Now it's going to create a key ring for storing passwords. You can put whatever password you want to protect that with. I'm just going to use Vagrant for the time being. It also opened up Chromium, which is the web browser, and we'll probably need that. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to favorites. Add Visual Studio Code to favorites. And there we go. Now we have a full kind of environment ready to go. I hope this was helpful. Please click like and subscribe to our channel. I plan to provide many more training videos coming up. Take care.